A teenage girl in Cleveland accepted a ride from a man she trusted. Minutes later, she was locked inside a house and vanished from the world. Years passed while the city forgot her name. But behind those walls, something even darker was happening. And one day, a single mistake would expose a secret no one expected. They told her she was safe now. They were wrong. In Cleveland, Ohio, a teenager vanished after trusting the wrong smile, the wrong promise, the wrong ride home. Her family searched the streets for years, holding flyers in the rain while police quietly closed doors and moved on to other cases. To the city, she became just another missing name. To one man, she became a secret. Behind an ordinary house on an ordinary street, something unspeakable was happening in total silence. No neighbors noticed. No cameras caught it. No patrol cars stopped long enough to ask the right question. This is not a story about a fast crime. It is a story about slow terror. It is about how someone can disappear in plain sight and still be alive. It is about how the justice system failed to hear the faintest cries for help, even when they were closer than anyone could imagine. And it is about a locked door that hid years of suffering inside a single home. Stay with this story, because the moment she finally finds a way to reach the outside world, will expose a nightmare far worse than anyone ever suspected. On a warm afternoon in Cleveland, 17-year-old Michelle Knight stepped off a city bus and waited for a ride that never came. She was tired, broke, and trying to get home after a court appointment that already felt like another fight she couldn't win. That's when a familiar face pulled up beside her. Ariel Castro. A local man. Friendly. Talkative. Someone she had seen before. Someone who knew her name. He offered help. Just a short ride. Just a quick stop. Michelle hesitated, only for a second. That second would erase the next 11 years of her life. Inside the car, the city blurred past her window. Traffic lights. Gas stations. Kids on bicycles. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. No fear yet. No screaming. No warning signs big enough to make her jump out. When the car turned onto a quiet residential street, Michelle assumed she had misunderstood the directions. But the engine slowed in front of a small, aging house. Castro smiled. "Come inside for a minute." The door closed behind her. The locks turned. And somewhere between the sound of the deadbolt and the sudden weight of his hands, Michelle understood something terrible. This was never a ride home. Michelle woke up on a bare mattress in a dark, narrow room. For a few seconds, she didn't remember how she got there. Then she tried to sit up. Her wrists burned. A chain ran from her hands to the metal frame beneath the bed. The walls were unfinished. Dirty. Close enough to touch on both sides if she stretched her arms. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. She called out. No answer. Her throat tightened as panic rushed in all at once. She pulled at the chain. It didn't move. She kicked the wall. The sound was swallowed instantly, as if the house itself was designed to keep secrets. The door opened without warning. Ariel stood there. Not angry. Not rushed. Come. He told her to be quiet. He told her nobody was looking for her. He told her this was her home now. When she screamed, his face changed. The room filled with violence. With pain she couldn't prepare for. With a silence afterward that felt even worse. Later, alone again, Michelle curled against the cold floor. And in the darkness, she realized something that would haunt her for years. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. The next morning, Michelle learned the rules. They weren't written anywhere. They were taught through fear. Ariel came down the narrow stairs and stood in the doorway, blocking the light from the hall. He spoke slowly, like a teacher explaining a lesson she would be tested on again and again. No noise. No banging. No calling out the window. No asking questions. If she followed the rules, he said, she could eat. If she broke them, he didn't finish the sentence. He turned on a small radio and placed it on the floor beside her mattress. Music filled the room for a few seconds, bright, happy, painfully normal. Then he lowered the volume until it became nothing but a faint whisper. "That's the outside world," he told her. He made sure she understood something else. People were not looking for her. He said her family had given up. He said police had stopped caring. He said girls like her disappeared all the time. By the time the door closed again, the radio still murmuring softly in the corner, Michelle's chest hurt from holding back screams. The worst part wasn't the dark. It was realizing he wanted her to believe that this tiny, locked room was the only place she still existed. Almost a year later, Michelle heard something that made her heart race. Footsteps. Not Ariel's. Lighter. Faster. Panicked. A scream echoed somewhere upstairs. Michelle froze. For months, the house had been a silent prison. The only sounds were the creaking stairs, the radio, and Ariel's heavy footsteps. But now there was another voice, crying, begging, terrified. Another girl. Her name was Amanda Berry. She had disappeared after leaving her job at a Burger King in Cleveland. The city searched for weeks. Her family held vigils. Her photo appeared on television screens across Ohio. But inside the house, none of that mattered. Amanda was dragged into the same nightmare. The walls carried every sound. Michelle could hear the struggle, the shouting, the door slamming shut somewhere above her. Then came the silence that always followed. Later that night, Ariel walked down the stairs with a satisfied grin. He said something that made Michelle's stomach drop. "Now you have company." For the first time since her kidnapping, Michelle realized something worse than being alone in that house. There might be more victims. And if Ariel kept bringing girls here, no one might ever leave. Time inside the house didn't move normally. Days blurred together until Michelle stopped counting them. She learned the sounds of the place, the creak of the stairs when Ariel came down, the rattle of keys on his belt, the way the floorboards groaned outside the locked door. Every noise meant something. Every silence meant something worse. Upstairs, Amanda was trapped too. At first they could only hear each other through the walls. Quiet whispers. Soft knocks. Proof that neither of them had gone completely invisible to the world. Those whispers kept them alive. But Ariel controlled everything. Food. Light. Hope. Sometimes he would leave them in darkness for hours. Sometimes days. Other times he would turn on the television upstairs just loud enough that they could hear laughter from sitcoms or the cheers of a baseball game. Normal life, happening just beyond their reach. The city outside kept moving. Kids rode bikes past the house. Neighbors mowed their lawns. Cars drove down the quiet Cleveland street without slowing down. No one knew what was happening inside. And then, one afternoon in April 2004, Michelle heard something new. The front door opened. Footsteps entered. Another girl's voice cried out in fear. And Michelle felt a cold realization settle in her chest. The nightmare had just grown bigger. The crying upstairs didn't stop for hours. Michelle lay on the floor, her heart pounding, listening to every muffled sound through the walls. She already knew what it meant. Another girl had been taken. Her name was Gina de Jesus, only 14 years old when she disappeared while walking home from school in Cleveland. Her family searched the neighborhood for days, knocking on doors just blocks away from the very house where she was now trapped. Inside, the three girls slowly realized the truth. They weren't alone anymore. Ariel kept them separated most of the time, locking each of them in different rooms. But sometimes their voices reached each other through the thin walls, whispers of comfort, quick reassurances that someone else was still alive in the house. Those brief moments meant everything. Amanda cried for her mother. Gina begged to go home. Michelle tried to stay strong for both of them. But Ariel controlled the house like a prison guard who never left his post. He watched. He listened. He punished even the smallest signs of resistance. And as months turned into years, something terrifying began to settle over the house. The outside world was forgetting them. While life continued on the streets of Cleveland, the three girls were slowly disappearing into silence. The years passed slowly inside the house on Seymour Avenue. Outside, Cleveland changed. New stores opened. Children in the neighborhood grew up and moved away. Missing posters faded in the sun until the paper peeled away from telephone poles. But inside Ariel Castro's home, time felt frozen. The three women survived however they could. Michelle tried to stay mentally strong, reminding the others to keep hope alive even when it felt impossible. Amanda and Gina whispered to each other through the walls whenever they had the chance, sharing memories of their families so they wouldn't forget who they used to be. Sometimes Ariel allowed them small things, a radio, a few minutes of television, a brief moment outside their locked rooms. But those moments were never kindness. They were reminders. Reminders that the normal world still existed, just beyond the walls they couldn't escape. Then, in 2006, something unexpected happened. Amanda gave birth to a baby girl inside the house. The child's name was Jocelyn. For the first time in years, the house held the sound of something other than fear. A baby's cry. And with that cry came a dangerous new feeling for the women trapped inside. Hope. Because someday, somehow, that child might be the reason the world finally noticed them. As the years passed, one thing slowly changed inside the house. Ariel grew careless. The three women noticed it in small ways at first: a door left unlocked a few seconds too long, a chain not pulled tight enough, a moment when he stepped outside without checking every room. But none of them dared to act. They had seen what happened when he caught someone trying to escape. Still, hope had begun to grow. Little Jocelyn was getting older. Her small footsteps echoed through the house, and sometimes Ariel allowed Amanda to move more freely so she could care for her daughter. It was the closest thing to freedom anyone inside that house had experienced in years. One afternoon in May 2013, something unusual happened. Ariel left the house, and the front door did not lock properly. Amanda noticed it first. The handle moved, just slightly. Her heart began pounding so loudly she thought it might alert the entire neighborhood. For years she had imagined this moment. But fear held her back. If she was wrong, if Ariel returned, everything would get worse. Still, the door was right there. And outside that door was the world she hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Amanda grabbed Jocelyn's hand and took the first step. Amanda pulled the door. It opened. For a second, she couldn't move. Sunlight poured into the hallway, brighter than anything she had seen in years. The air from outside rushed in, carrying the sound of traffic, voices, and a barking dog somewhere down the street. The normal world. Amanda stepped onto the porch, holding Jocelyn tightly. Her legs shook as she ran toward the nearest house. She pounded on the door and screamed for help, her voice cracking from panic and disbelief. A neighbor, Charles Ramsey, heard the noise and rushed outside. Amanda was crying so hard she could barely speak. "My name is Amanda Berry," she shouted. "I've been kidnapped." Ramsey stared at her in shock. He knew that name. The entire city had once searched for her. Within minutes, he helped her break the door completely open so the others could escape. Inside the house, Michelle and Gina ran toward freedom for the first time in years. Police sirens filled Seymour Avenue as officers rushed to the scene. And behind them, the house that had hidden a nightmare for over a decade was finally exposed. But the real shock was only beginning. Because inside that house, investigators would soon discover just how long the horror had lasted. Police officers entered the small house on Seymour Avenue expecting a kidnapping scene. What they found was far worse. Chains bolted to walls. Locked doors. Rooms turned into cages. Investigators walked slowly through the dark hallways, realizing the truth step by step. For years, 3 women had been hidden inside this ordinary-looking Cleveland home while the entire city moved around it. Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus. Each had disappeared years apart. Each had been searched for. Each had slowly faded from headlines as time passed. Yet all along, they were here, just a few miles from their families. The rescue shocked the nation. News trucks lined the street. Neighbors stood outside in disbelief, struggling to understand how something so terrible could happen right next door without anyone noticing. Soon after, Ariel Castro was arrested. The house that held a decade of suffering was demolished not long after the investigation ended, erased from the neighborhood like a nightmare people wanted to forget. But for the 3 survivors, the story didn't end there. Because surviving the house was only the beginning of reclaiming their lives. Stories like this are hard to hear, but they matter. For more than 10 years, 3 women were trapped in silence while the world unknowingly moved on without them. Their courage, their survival, and the moment one brave decision opened that door changed everything. But cases like this remind us of something important. Behind every missing person poster is a real life, a real family, and a story that might still be unfolding somewhere. Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus refused to let their voices disappear. Even after years of darkness, they found the strength to survive long enough for the truth to come out. And sometimes, that truth is closer than anyone realizes. If this story moved you, shocked you, or made you think twice about the mysteries that still exist around us, stay with the channel. Because there are many real cases where the truth is stranger and darker than fiction. Follow for more real true crime stories, told one chapter at a time. And remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that actually happened.